Here's football. KNBR, the sports leader. Your faithful fix with your host Larry Krueger begins now.
And good morning. Welcome. Larry Krueger with you. It's 49er Forecast on a beautiful Saturday. Welcome to November. Unbelievable. We're in November. September flew by. October flew by. And now here we are, November. And the 49ers are in New York, where tomorrow in New Jersey, I should say, they'll take on the New York Football Giants at MetLife Stadium. 49ers looking to put last week in the rearview mirror. Last week was ugly. Couldn't do anything. Could not do anything. I asked Kubiak about it because, it's like we're observers of the Niners. They're living it, right? They're living it. And I've been in that room. I've been in that coach's booth, and I've sat there, and it's like your whole world is this game. And to everybody else, it's a diversion for the weekend, But for those guys, it's their life. They're living and breathing it, and they're living and dying with it. And I asked Kubiak about that. I'm like, God, this last game must have just been brutal. I mean, you're an offensive coach. You come to work. You probably worked 100 hours last week on that offensive game plan. And Will Anderson is just destroying Colton McKivitz. And he's living in the backfield, and you can't do anything. They couldn't do anything. They couldn't even get a first down. They've got Kittle. They've got McCaffrey. Their offensive play caller's Kyle Shanahan. They could not do anything against Houston. Thorough domination. And I asked Kubiak about it, and he's like, yeah. I said, are you just on fire? In a bad way? Are you screaming? Are you and Kyle swearing at each other on the headsets? What is going on in the second quarter in your mind, in your world, as you can't even get a singular first down? And he's like, yeah, it's bad. It's really bad, man. It's like you're sitting there and you're just your blood is boiling, and you're thinking about all these things that you could potentially do to unlock this thing, and it's not happening, and you can't get a first down, and you're not moving the ball, and you're giving the ball back to, putting your defense back in the field repeatedly. You're putting them in a bad spot because you're losing the time of possession dramatically. And he owned it. He's like, yeah, it was hell. It was hell on earth. So they're looking to bounce back in a big way in New York, in New Jersey against the Giants on Sunday. And they get Jackson Dart and a upstart Giant team that just lost Cam Scatterbo for the year. So, in some ways, good news for the Niners that they don't have to go against Scat, who Shanahan admitted to me when I asked him. He said, yeah, we loved him. We wanted him in the draft. We loved him. He just didn't fall to us. I think the Niners were probably going to take him in the fourth round, and the Giants took him first. So he's a New York Giant, even though he's a Niner fan, and I know he started off at Sac State. Stingers up, bzz, bzz, all Sac State guys have to stick together. It was my one opportunity between him and Marte Mapu. It was my one opportunity to actually cover a Sac State football player while covering the Niners, and it didn't happen. But Cam is out, and it will be Tyrone Tracy going in this game for New York. And Tyrone Tracy's a tremendous receiver. In fact, he was a collegiate wide receiver, I believe, at Purdue, and he's a good player. He's a really good player. So Niners are going to have to, run the ball, stop the run. That, if you want to, what's the key in this game? I think this game is the game of the year for the 49ers. I think whatever happens in this game is going to mirror the rest of this season. I really feel that way. I feel strongly about this one. And I don't feel like that week to week, but I really feel like this is the fork in the road. Anything could happen in this game. The Niners could win this game 28-10. The Niners could lose this game 28-10. I think this game defines where they go. They're a better team than the New York Giants. And the Giants are dead last in the NFL against the run. 30th, I think, overall on the rushing yards per game. But if you look at many of the top run metrics in the game, they're 32nd almost across the board. They're just a horrible run defense. Why are they so bad? It's the UCLA inside linebacker, Mirosow. He's Muasau. He's not standing up. It's Bobby Okereke, the former Stanford linebacker who's lost a lot. That's their inside linebacker duo, and they're just getting washed out, and their teams are running the ball. I mean, this team has Dexter Lawrence in the middle, and teams are running the ball at will against the New York Giants. So the game plan is real simple. Run the ball. Run the football. Run it with CMC, run it with Brian Robinson, run it with Garendo if you have to. Run the ball. 60% run in this game. Run the ball. And I think this game could go either way. If the Niners get it on their terms, they run the ball. Giants can't stop the run. Mac Jones will start at quarterback, by the way. He play action passes off of a strong run game, and maybe even takes a couple shots down the field to Jordan Watkins. Dare to dream. I'd love to see that. Maybe create a little space for once. That would be nice. So I think that's the plan. I think that is the plan that gets the Niners to victory. Run the ball. And it sounds real simple, but they haven't been able to do it. They haven't been able to run the ball. Outside of the Atlanta game, they have not been able to successfully and efficiently run the football, despite having Christian McCaffrey. So is that because the line's not good? Is it because they suddenly forgotten how to do it? There's all these people going, Christian's lost a step. I don't buy that. I don't buy that. I really don't. To me, he doesn't look like, I watch this stuff close. I'm at every single practice. I don't see a guy that's lost a step. I see a guy who's pretty damn good. I see an offensive line that is getting their lunch handed to them up front. If Ben Barch is not going to go in this game, but they need Ben Barch back at left guard. Colby is a rookie, and he's a rookie with a groin strain. He's doing the best he can. He's going to be a solid NFL offensive lineman for years to come. But Barch is a bigger body. He's a veteran. He's at this point, because he's a veteran, he's a smarter player. Can't stay healthy, but he's the better option. If they can get him back in there, it would really help. So run the ball. Run the football. If you got to use McCaffrey, as a receiver a little bit in this game, then fine. Run Brian Robinson, but run the ball and stick with the run and really run it down their throat and dominate the time of possession. I think, the Niners offense is going to have to understand that they need to take on a bigger responsibility. No Bosa, no Fred. Does Bethune need to step up? Yeah. Does Keon White need to play? Yeah. The guys stepping in for those guys are important, but what's more important is the 49ers offense plays complementary ball and runs the ball, dominates the time of possession. What happened last week is the absolute opposite of what the Niners need to have happen. If they get dominated time of possession-wise, they're going to lose. If they give up gigantic amounts of chunk yard plays because of busted coverages, they're going to lose. Last week, they did both, and they lost. So that's where this thing is going to be won or lost. Can the Niners run the football? This game is really all about who gets it on their terms. If the Niners run the football at this horrendous Giants run D, win the time of possession, and get a lead, and I think it could be a game where the 49ers methodically roll to a 28-9 victory. 28-13, something like that. That's what I'm seeing. I think 28-10, 28-13 Niners is possible. Okay. And then there's the other side of this thing. If the Giants get it on their terms, somehow, some way, the Niners defense, which was so pathetically bad last week, continues to make, opposing offenses, mediocre offenses look great. And Jackson Dart starts lighting them up. And Jackson Dart can run, and he doesn't see it well either. So he's going to run quickly. He's going to look at his first read, and if he doesn't see it, he's literally a second away from taking off because he doesn't believe in it. He doesn't see the field. He's a young player. He's really raw, talented, can run, good arm, but he's raw. He doesn't see coverage. He doesn't read coverage. He's not leading guys to the void in the defense. He just doesn't. He's not playing like a veteran, but he's mobile, and he's competitive, and he's got some juice, and they really like him. He's a very, very charismatic leader. And he can run, and he's eager to run, and he wants to run. He's going to take off, and he's going to run. If this guy runs for 4 or 5 first downs and moves the chains, and they put up touchdowns, and they get a lead, if the 49ers fall behind 14 points in this game, they're cooked. This is the only way to lose to the New York Giants. Fall into a hole, and then let this be a referendum on who's better, Brian Burns or Colton McKivitz. If it gets to, the Niners are down at halftime, 2 touchdowns, this is the game on the Giants' terms. The Giants want to get a lead, and then they've got a defensive line that can go hunt the quarterback. Burns has 10 sacks. The Niners have 9. Think about that. Brian Burns has outsacked the entire 49er team. That's their reality. So Burns is an awesome pass rusher. He's number 0, hard to miss. They got Dexter Lawrence inside number 97. It's a 3-4 under front. That's what they play. Lawrence is on the nose, and they got some hyphenated names off to the sides. They got Roy Robertson Harris. They got Raheem Nunez Roches, who I liked years ago in college. He's been around. He's been in Kansas City. He's been in Tampa. Now he's in New York. So that's their down 3. And then they've got Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau off the edges. And then when those guys get tired, here comes Abdul Carter. So, they can really, really bend the edge. And Burns is the ringleader of the whole thing. And, yeah, if you fall behind by 10 points, 14 points against Brian Burns, Abdul Carter, and Kayvon Thibodeau, you're going to lose. You're going to lose. And Mac Jones is probably going to get knocked out. But in this game, the one thing that's different about the Giants this week compared to past weeks, they're really banged up on the corner. Paulson Adebo, you know that name, the former Stanford corner. He was a really good player down on the farm. Out. He's out. He's hurt. He's not playing. Cordell Flott, their number 2 corner. He's out. Art Green, one of their backup corners. He's out. Bay Area native, Javon Holland, great guy. Love Javon Holland. Really good player at Oregon. They signed him as a free agent in the offseason to try to replace Xavier McKinney, who had bolted to the Packers. Javon Holland out, injured. So, they've got some significant injuries in their secondary. You got 4 guys that are out in their secondary. So, this is not the best Giant team. By the way, last week, Philly ran for 270 on this team. They had 2 different backs go for 100. They had 2 different backs go for over 10 yards a carry. So run the ball. Run the ball, play the game on your terms. Force the Darius Muasows and Bobby Okerekes to make plays all day. Run the ball. Run the ball, dominate the clock. That's your ticket. Play the game on your terms, and you win 28-10, and you're right there with all the other contenders in the NFC going into the trade deadline. Then maybe Lynch gets something done. We'll talk about that in a second. And you're good to go. You're good to go. Let's see what you got. You got Purdy coming back. You got 2 quarterbacks you can win with. You're starting to run the ball. Life's good. You fall behind in this game, and somehow, the offense stumbles in the first half, gets off to a slow start, whatever, and the Giants get out to a lead, and now it becomes a referendum about their D-line against your O-line in the second half of this game. Then you lose 28-10. Then it's time to just get real. Probably not trading for anybody. Probably, you're probably really not a contender at that point. If you can't beat if you get beat by the New York Giants 28-10 in November, you're probably not a Super Bowl contender. It's probably just not your year. It's probably time to chalk it up and just be like, you know what? We'll play this thing out, but we're not making any kind of overtures or any kind of additions to this year's team because we're not going to trade any draft picks next year because why? Why would we? We can't beat the New York Giants. They just got their doors blown off by the Philadelphia Eagles. Eagles just ran from us 300 yards, and that same team beat us 28-10. You know what I mean? So a big loss tomorrow, I think, is crushing for the Niners. A big win tomorrow, I think, gets them right back on the track of where they want to go. And it's all there for them. It's all there for them in a very flawed NFC. All right, so that's what I see in the matchup, and we're going to talk more about the matchup with Todd Husak. I mean, all the same things are important as far as turnovers and that kind of thing. We could get into some more details, and we will. But I think it's really as simple as that. The Niners could win this game 28-10. They could lose this game 28-10. And it's all going to be about who gets the game on their terms. Niners get it on their terms, they're going to win. Niners get it, play it on the Giants' terms. It's going to be Brian Burns crushing quarterbacks and sacks galore and the Niners offensive line crumbling. So I mean I think it's all possible. It's all possible, which makes tomorrow really, really intriguing. All right. Today, though, Dinah Rossini had the latest on the 49ers. So why don't we hit that before we take a timeout? A lot of interesting rumors, as you would expect, with the trade deadline 3 days away. Trade deadline is November 4th. 49ers have already picked up Keon White. Keon White's going to be a good fit. Why? Because he's not an outside backer and he's not a two gapper. That's what New England needs. They need two gappers to play defensive tackle, and they need outside linebackers to play their scheme. He's neither. He's not an outside linebacker. He can't drop and cover. He's not a two gapper. He's a one gap penetrating, get up the field and go kind of a guy, which is exactly a perfect fit in Robert Saleh's defense. And I think Keon White's going to be far better in San Francisco than he was in New England. I think that was a really nice trade by Lynch. But Dinah Rossini had a number of interesting things today. And one of the reports is that the 49ers are interested in Trey Hendrickson. They have reportedly also called the Dolphins about Jalen Phillips, according to Dinah Rossini. Dolphins want a third-round pick. Phillips is a free agent at the end of the year. See, that's the move I don't think Lynch wants to make. He went on with Murph and Marcus on Thursday, and he said, we don't want to trade. We don't want to give away our 26th draft, and we don't want to trade for guys who are free agents at the end of the year. If they get anybody who's a free agent, I think it's somebody that they either didn't pay a lot for, or it's somebody that they're looking to extend and will try to extend. But Diana Rossini had a bunch of different reports today. One of them was that the ones that I think are the most interesting as far as the Niners are concerned. One says the Dolphins want a third-round pick for Jalen Phillips and that the Eagles, Niners, and Patriots are among the teams showing interest there. The Eagles also want a defensive end. She says Myles Garrett is not getting traded. There was a lot of talk the Eagles would trade 3 number ones for him. They're not going to. What else? She says the Commanders could sell Debo, but also are in the market for a pass rusher. Thought that was interesting. She says the Titans are fielding the most calls on Arden Key, Draymond Jones, Tony Pollard, and Tavondre Sweat. Now, that last name to me is really interesting. Tavondre Sweat played at Texas. He's a big, powerful two-gapping tackle who's got a lot of talent. Now, he's a little immature. But if I could get Arden Key and Tavondre Sweat, I would do it. Now, the other talk is that the Niners are interested in not just Trey Hendrickson, but Cam Taylor-Britt and Logan Wilson from the Bengals. And I know Lynch doesn't want to trade, draft capital, but if you could get that kind of a deal where you could get 3 needs filled at once, the Niners wanted Cam Taylor-Britt in the 22 draft in round 2. They were prepared to take Cam Taylor-Britt, I'm pretty sure, from the people that I've talked to around the Niners. And what happened was the Bengals traded up, I think it was with Buffalo, right into the spot in front of them, took Cam Taylor-Britt, and he's been a Bengal ever since. The Niners, with the next pick, unfortunately went with Drake Jackson. And we know how that went. Drake's now a Commander, and he had tons of knee injuries here. But the Niners wanted Cam Taylor-Britt, and he's a big corner, played at Nebraska. He's very athletic, super fast, 4.3 speed, very strong. One of these, he was on the Bruce Feldman's freaks list. I mean, he's really strong, really fast, tremendous all-around athlete. If the Niners could get help on all 3 levels, Trey Hendrickson, Logan Wilson for their linebacking core, and Cam Taylor-Britt, would Lynch be willing to move a day 2 pick? I don't think he's moving that one. I just don't. I think it's earmarked for a tackle. I don't think he's going to budge on that. But would you trade this year's 2 and maybe next year's 2 if you could get Hendrickson, Cam Taylor-Britt in the same trade and Logan Wilson and fill 3 needs? I mean, the Niners with the injuries they've had could really use some volume here. They could use 2 or 3 new players in that room. All 3 levels of the defense could use a little help. Hendrickson, obviously, I think Hendrickson is so intriguing because the Niners have traded for Chase Young in the past and he dogged it. You can't have guys who have questionable motors coming in. You can't have guys who play for the cash and don't play for the love of the sport. Hendrickson, his motor is nobody would ever challenge his motor. His motor is legendary. And so I think Lynch is really wants Hendrickson because he doesn't want to spend money or draft capital on anybody who doesn't play as hard as the Niners play. And Hendrickson probably plays harder, where some of these guys don't play as hard, and you can't, that ruins your whole deal. You can't have guys. You can't trade for hired guns and then have them coast. That's what happened with Chase Young. It was embarrassing. It was really embarrassing. He doesn't want that to happen again. Hendrickson's not that kind of guy. Hendrickson's going to play with his hair on fire. So, all right, let's do this. So that's the latest on the Niner trade front. They picked up Keon White. They're still, out there making calls, taking calls. Sounds like they really want Trey Hendrickson. Sounds like they may grow the deal for Cam Taylor-Britt and Logan Wilson if they can. Keep an eye on Tennessee and what they've got. Keep an eye on Miami, especially after Chris Greer, their general manager, just got dumped after they lost Thursday night to the Ravens. So a lot going on in the rumor mill. But we'll talk more about this matchup next with Todd Husak. One of my favorite guests all week long is Todd Husak. We'll get his thoughts on the Niners and the Giants and how the Niners are looking going into the trade deadline next as we continue. It's 49er Forecast on a beautiful Saturday here in Northern California. And, of course, you're listening to The Sports Leader.
KNBR, The Sports Leader. Faithful, time to make some Niners noise. 49ers Forecast with Larry Krueger now continues on your proud home of 49ers football. KNBR, the sports leader.
All right, welcome back to 49er Forecast as we get you ready for the Niners and the New York Giants. And a guy who's been with us all year on KNBR on the pre- and post-game shows, Todd Husak, former Stanford quarterback, former NFL quarterback, and he's with us on the Uma guest line to help us break it down. Todd, how are you?
Oh, doing well. The roller coaster of a season continues. Ups and downs and injuries and more injuries. And just when you think they're out of it, a couple more injuries. So we'll see. We'll see what team takes the field on Sunday. But they got a team that believes in their quarterback and their opponent in the New York Giants and Jackson Dart. So they're going to have to be sharp. I think much sharper than they were a week ago against Houston.
Yeah. What do you think of Dart? I mean, there's no question he can run. He's a young quarterback, so I don't know that he sees the field real well. I'm not really sure if he's seeing coverage real well. He's from what I can tell, Todd, he's looking at his first read, occasionally a second read, but then he's tucking it away, and he's kind of even though he's not like I wouldn't necessarily call him the greatest runner ever, but you know what? He's a willing runner, and he's eager to run and take off and make plays if the first or second read isn't there.
Yeah, he's got nearly 200 yards rushing on the season and 4.5 yards a carry. So when he does decide to run it, he can make some things happen. He's dangerous, right? He's a young guy who believes a lot in himself. And I think that's the team right now. When they made that switch from Russell Wilson, I think a lot earlier than most people expected. Russell Wilson he's shot, right? I mean, his career has just been disappointment after disappointment the last few years. So they bring in the rookie and he doesn't disappoint. He's making plays. He's talking trash. He's got some bravado, and they win his his opening game as a starter. And all of a sudden that whole city believes in him. So I think he does enough to make a team worried about him. And you're right. I think there's something to just that one or two read and then go make a play. There's something dangerous about that, right? And the 49ers did not create much of a pass rush at all a week ago against C.J. Stroud, and you saw what happened with the Houston Texans offense where they just chipped away and held the ball the entire game. They've got to figure out a way to make some plays against Jackson Dart without giving up too many big plays. I think right now what the 49ers have to come to grips with is they're either going to continue to allow the long drives and try to be tough in the red zone, or they're going to blitz more and try to make some plays, knowing that on the back end they might give up a big dagger or two. But right now, that formula against Houston made it tough for everybody. I think the offense made it even tougher by not executing on third down. But Jackson Dart, I like Jackson Dart a lot. I think his attitude and his approach. I mean, I don't get the big chain that he wears, like big bling on his neck, but I think he's got that locker room, and we saw it early with Brock Purdy. Guys talking about, hey, this guy's the real deal. I've said it for years. Locker rooms know they can recognize the guy, and they're talking about him as the guy. So I would think he's going to be the starter in New York for the next few years at least, and I think he's got a good future ahead of him.
Yeah, I mean they're loving him. I mean, they're loving him there. He's the toast of the town. The Giants are very popular. Now he's lost Malik Neighbors for the year. His number one receiver is probably Wan'Dale Robinson. He also uses Darius Slayton, who's got good size and speed, and Theo Johnson, the former Penn State tight end. They lost Scattaboo last week to an injury, so he's done for the year. I'll tell you what, we should talk about the Niners-Texans for a second. I thought it was kind of a concerning thing, and I brought it up to Robert Saleh this week, that this felt like the 49ers. I mean, what was discouraging about the game against Houston was that Houston's offense is not very good. And yet the 49ers, I think the thing that was most disappointing when I watched it a second time was just that Demo Lenore, Renardo Green, Upton Stout, I think are better athletes than Xavier Hutchinson, Jalen Knoll, and Jaden Higgins. And I just felt like the Niners played, and I mentioned it to Saleh, it just felt like it didn't feel like they were connected. Like, like the plan up front didn't feel connected to the coverage on the back end. They he blitzed 33% of the time. He was trying to speed up the quarterback, but then a lot of times they were playing off coverage, and there was just too much room there, and they made it too easy on Stroud. And I would have challenged Hutchinson, Knoll, and Higgins, got right in their face, and just demanded that they throw it over the top of your head and compete with them for every blade of grass. And instead, they didn't. He kind of said it was his fault that he didn't put his guys in the best position. He kind of fell on the sword. What did you make of that, though? I mean, Stroud the week before against Seattle, Todd, couldn't complete a pass, and they just every time he dropped back to pass in this game, it seemed like the Niner defenders they couldn't back up enough. It was crazy.
Well, I agree with you. They didn't put, number one, any rush pressure on Stroud, so he was able to kind of survey the field, and then they didn't make him force it into small windows. Right? To your point, there wasn't the tight coverage, and I think not because the DBs didn't play very well, but I think they were just playing off and a little soft coverage. And I agree with you. I think the DBs for the 49ers are tough, big, strong, physical, good tacklers. We saw it against Atlanta, and that was something that stood out to me watching the differences between Houston and Atlanta. Atlanta, it was 4 and 5 guys around the pile every play. They didn't let Bijan Robinson get started, and the first guy made the tackle, but the other 3 or 4 were there to push him backwards. Too much yards after contact for Houston, and that play that could have been 3 yards. You go back to a drive early in the game. It was long distance. Marks bounced off a carry or bounced off a defender and got like 6 or 7 more yards where it could have been 3rd and 8, and instead it's 3rd and 2. And so little plays like that over the course of the game. And man, we've seen, Larry, you go back a couple of weeks ago, there was like a 19-play drive, I want to say, for Atlanta, and then opening drive for Houston was 13 plays, and the opponents are eating up the clock. And I think part of that is the 49ers just aren't putting pressure, and they're not really stopping the run. You're not seeing 2nd and 12, you're seeing 2nd and 4s. And so the other team just controls the clock, and they were able to overcome it against Atlanta, but the offense wasn't able to do their part in converting the 3rd downs on the back end. But I'm with you. I think forcing the opponents to make mistakes, there's a lot of sitting back, and it's worked. It's tough to criticize what Robert Saleh has done with this defensive unit early in the season because they've been consistently the strength of this team. But I think what you're seeing is a team that needs to be a little more aggressive, put pressure on the opposition, and then play tight coverage when that ball is forced out early. And part of it is forcing the ball out early too. Even when you blitz, you got to get home and you got to get there. You got to beat the blocks up front. And hopefully they have a strategy to do that against Jackson Dart, who's a young quarterback. You would hope he makes mistakes. And frankly, CJ Stroud has been a guy who makes a lot of mistakes too, but he didn't make any other than the one. Finally, the 49ers get an interception after 14 weeks without one, but it was too easy for CJ Stroud last week. Hopefully they can put a little more pressure on Dart this week, make the game a little tougher for him.
Well, the one thing the Texans lacked was they lacked big playability, and the Niners had about 4 or 5 busts and gave them big plays. Woody Marks had a 50-yard reception. Hutchinson caught a 33-yard ball. Jalen Knoll had a 44-yard gainer. They had some breakdowns. They had some busts. And I guess, should we just expect that that's going to be reality post Fred Warner, that he was so good at communication? Because it just seems like their communication fell apart. I mean, Bethune got stuck inside one time. There were some man-to-man coverages where it just looked like Jair Brown was in trail positions. I thought Brown had a couple really nice stops. One that led to a real hard run stop against Woody Marks that led to a field goal, forced a field goal.
Yeah,
that was a nice play. But it just seems like either Mustafa and Brown either can't cover or just are out of rhythm right now. And they really struggled to play coverage in this game. And it makes you wonder if that's a problem that's going to persist.
Well, we're talking a little bit out of both sides of our mouths, where we want the Niners to create pressure and force the quarterback to make the quick decision. But when you bring pressure, that means you're going to be singled up on the outside, which outside of the the play to Marks in the flat on the right side where there was nobody for the 49ers, and he was able to turn it up and not make contact with anybody until he was 45 yards down the field. The Niners were in position to make plays. They just got beat one-on-one. And so that's going to happen, but do you trust your players enough to get the better of the opposition 1 or 2 or 3 times a game? And whether it's an interception or you bat the ball down and you force a 3rd and long or force a punt, take your chances with your athletes in space by bringing some of that pressure. I think you're right. I think Mustafa and Brown, their forte is coming up to stop the run. That's where they specialize. They're big, strong, hard hitters. In coverage, they're not as good. So you can play soft and allow the quarterbacks to pick you apart, or you can bring pressure and maybe expose your safeties to some one-on-one coverage. And that's when we saw the big plays from Houston throwing the ball down the field.
One of the stats that really jumped out to me this week, Todd, was that there was a list of teams that face the blitz on less than 25% of the dropbacks, but also have allowed a pressure rate above 34%. And there's 5 teams, and it really kind of isolates the offensive line to some degree, because these are teams that are not getting blitzed a lot. So they probably have quarterbacks that can process or whatever. But they are giving up a pressure rate above 34%. And the Niners, it's Vikings, Saints, Titans, Cardinals, and the 49ers. What does that stat tell you?
Well, it's a good stat. I like that one. I think it does point out that when other teams are only bringing 4, they're putting some pressure on the QB. It could also point out that the QBs hold the ball a little too long, where they're not making that quick decision, which I don't think is the case with the 49ers. I mean, that's one of Mac Jones's really strengths, is recognizing and getting the ball out of his hands. So I'm a little surprised. So I think that does go back to the offensive line. There was a play early in the Houston game. They brought an unblocked man in the A-gap. I don't know if you saw this, Larry. He thought it was a screen. He was unblocked right in Mac Jones' face. He stopped and turned around because he thought it was a screen. He thought he was getting tricked.
Yeah, it was too easy.
And so
it was toe guy, I believe.
Yeah, and so things like that. I point to scheme has to protect the A gap. So that's either a miscommunication between Mac Jones and the O line, or the O linemen are not on the same page on who's coming. But I do think the O line is probably more talented than what they're playing to. I mean, I think you've seen a regression in Pooney, and maybe he's still hurt. He was a little banged up in the preseason. Trent Williams has been a guy that you just count on as that anchor left tackle. We've seen him get beat a few times, and then you've got some young guys up front that are playing, and the starters are injured. So it's a younger group. So how do they come together and be more solid? I think more reps should help. And with a guy like Trent Williams, who's seen it all and done it all, Pooney needs to get back to playing like he did last year with that. I mean, he was tough. He did not lose many one-on-one battles as a rookie, and we've seen that happen too many times here in his sophomore season. So I think they do have to play better as a unit, but also even when they're matched up one-on-one, they're on the same page with everybody, they're getting beat. And so whether it's technique or strength or whatever it is, they've got to figure out a way to be better. And there's things you can do schematically, whether it's roll the quarterback out or do more play action or keep, have it be a 7-man protection where you keep a tight end in. And it's not just, hey, it's our 5 versus their 5 or 4. But I think they've got to do a better job of communicating, number one, and then winning when they have the chance, one-on-one battles. I think running the ball more effectively, the run game just never had a chance to get going against Houston. And we saw it against Atlanta. Once that run game gets going, the pass protection gets a little bit easier when that defensive lineman's on his heels a little bit because you just ran power at him 3 times in a row. He's not as easy for him to get off the ball and get to the quarterback's lap, who's 7 yards deep. So all of it works in tandem. And again, I go back to 3rd down conversion, where the Niners have been so good, especially early in the game, holding onto the ball, converting, opening up the playbook. And what that does for a play caller like Shanahan is allows him to counterpunch later in the game. When you only run 6 plays in the first quarter, you haven't set anything up yet. It takes another 2 or 3 series to set things up. And all of a sudden, by that time, the game wasn't quite over, but it was getting there. So they have to be better on 3rd down, especially early in the game. I think the 49ers, one of the biggest pieces they're lacking right now is big plays. We still haven't seen it in the run game, and Mac Jones has done a great job running the offense. We haven't seen – he throws a great 15-yard in route, and he's been very efficient, but we haven't seen it down the field at all. He had Demarcus Robinson a couple weeks ago where Robinson dropped it. But outside of that, he really hasn't thrown the ball more than 30 yards downfield since he's been starting. So I think if they can figure out a way to open up – now, you have to block, but figure out a way to open up that downfield passing game as well. All of it works together. You run the ball better, play action works better. But eventually, we've talked about it now. You got to win one-on-one battles. Marcus Robinson didn't win it. But I'd like to see him take some more shots down the field and see, without Pearsall, it's a little tougher. But trust your guys to make plays down the field, trust the protection hold up, and trust your QB to put it on the money.
I'd like to see them scheme some looks for Watkins. I mean, they used to scheme looks for Debo, and I think Watkins can run all those plays that Debo ran. So that's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see them utilize him because he is a big play guy, and he's got a lot of speed, and he did it last year in the SEC, and I get the feeling that he could do it. He did have a key drop, but, I mean, come on, it's his first game. People were a little hard on him on that. The O-line, D-line is really where this thing's going to be decided, and it's like, the other stat that I thought was amazing, Mac Jones was pressured this week against Houston 18 times, half of his dropbacks. When he was under pressure, Todd, Jones went 4 for 13 for 64 yards and a pick. Okay. And then you look at Stroud by comparison, he was pressured on a season low, 21.4% of his dropbacks, despite the fact that the Niners blitzed a season high almost 35% of the dropbacks were blitzes. So the Niners blitzed at the highest rate, but Stroud was still pressured at the lowest rate he's been pressured at all year. But this is the number that really jumps out. When the Niners did not blitz Stroud, they only had a 7.1 pressure rate.
Yeah.
I mean, they basically, when they didn't send, I mean, I think I'm right, and I think Robert Saleh told me I'm right when I asked him about, the offensive front, the defensive front and the coverage not necessarily being tied together. But, I mean, he was out there just doing whatever he could do. And because without sending pressure, they weren't affecting the quarterback at all. So that's going to be something to watch for, because if you can cloud up Dart's picture, if you can, make him try to read coverage, if you can make him pause, I don't think that's his strength. If he gets defined, easy looks that he can step into, and there's nobody's making a play on the football, he could get into an incredible rhythm and easily beat them.
Most quarterbacks in the NFL, if you're not pressuring them at 7-on-7, they're going to pick you apart. I mean, there's only a few that aren't good enough to do that, and mostly those are second and third stringers. Hopefully we get a chance to see your guy Keon White, who I know you love and have been a fan of for a while. But you're right. If you cannot put any pressure on the quarterback with only a four-man rush, that takes away a huge part of any defensive game plan. And I think what you saw against Houston, and it worked for both sides. Early in the game, offensive coordinators have their plan, defensive coordinators have their plan. If that defensive coordinator blitzes early in the game, let's say in the first drive they blitz, whatever, you run 10 plays, they blitz 3 times, and it gets home, or at least putting the pressure on the quarterback, that's going to go way up. And I think that's what we saw. They were able to put pressure on Mac Jones early in the game, and so that continued, and they were scheming up. Even if they weren't bringing 6, they were doing enough up front to put pressure on him. And on the flip side, they weren't able to put pressure on CJ Stroud, even with it. So again, it goes back to the one-on-one matchups, but if the 49ers had converted a couple early third downs against that pressure, it probably changes the whole complexion of the game. Now maybe Houston's not bringing the pressure as much, and they're going to play a little more coverage, and that takes a little pressure off Mac Jones. So that's why football is so great. Each game, each series, each quarter builds on what has happened already in that game and already happened in the season. And the 49ers just didn't execute. But by the way, there's a few games throughout this year, go back to Atlanta or Arizona, they're a few plays away from, if they don't convert here or there or make a big play, that game ends up like it did last week against Houston. But the 49ers are a good team, and they have made those plays throughout the season, which is why they're 5-3. They just didn't get it done against Houston. They couldn't pick up that third down. They couldn't win one-on-one. They couldn't get to the quarterback when they had chances, and they didn't gang tackle very well. And so you can see what happens if Houston came to play and they had a good plan. 49ers didn't execute, didn't tackle well, and it turned into a loss. And it was pretty evident early on, just those stats from the first half, even with the good finish. Credit the 49ers for keeping them out of the end zone early, but boy, that time of possession, that's something you don't see very often. And Houston just controlled the game from the first kick.
Well, and the Niners had no rhythm at all. I mean, you need to be able to get a few plays called to get into an offensive rhythm. Mac Jones spoke to the media earlier this week, and he had this to say about Jordan Watkins. Listen to this.
As a rookie, I remember my first game too, like you're going to have your jitters and you might not be exactly where you want to be, and he's trying to, play catch up a little bit, but he has all the skills and he's lining up right now in practice and doing the right stuff. So that's all I care about. And I told him, like, it's your first one, right? So don't worry about, your first game in general, whether it was really good or really bad. Like, just keep working and you'll get more comfortable. And I really like his speed and what he did in college, and some of those things are showing up in practice. So I'm definitely really excited about him.
Yeah, he's talking about Jordan Watkins. There was the volume was a little low, but Watkins has ability. I mean, and I know they haven't utilized him yet, but he really looked great this summer, catching balls down the field. And the Niners haven't had a player like this in quite a while. What does it mean for a quarterback to add a guy with 4.37 speed when the rest of your receivers really don't run anything like that? What does that do for a quarterback?
Well, I think we've seen it in the Chiefs getting Rashee Rice back the last few weeks, right? Just that element of a defensive coordinator has a plan to know where your speedster is and how he can take the top off a defense. Now, the difference is Watkins hasn't done it. You've heard stories about him, and he looked good in camp, but he hasn't done it in the preseason. He hasn't done it consistently in practice. So it's a little bit of a leap of faith. And yes, Mac Jones, the 49ers are very lucky to have a veteran, seasoned guy in that backup role who is saying and doing all of the right things and handling himself very well. But when you're 5-3 and you're bringing some rookies who haven't played much into the fold, you've got to execute. We're going to call your number a couple times. You got to step up and make some plays. Now, that's a lot of pressure on a young man, but this is why we drafted you, and you got to go out there and do it. Now, I think Larry, I like him a lot too. I loved him coming out of college, a speedster, getting it done in the SEC and with Jackson Dart and that high-flying offense. He's great in space. He's not huge, but he can win in one-on-one coverage. He's a playmaker. And so can they dial up a couple throws for him, whether it's a slip screen or something to get him the ball and let him operate? I'd love to see a couple deep shots to him as well, because he is the one guy out of that receiver group with Pearsall out. I think it's probably Pearsall. We've seen him do it a few times this year. I was hoping to see a little bit more out of Demarcus Robinson. He has not produced anywhere near, I think, what I was hoping for or expecting once he came back. So maybe Watkins is that difference maker in the wide receiver room where they trust him. I think you're right. To put 50 plays on him is too much, but get out there for a dozen and let's see what you can do. And if he turns out to be a playmaker early in the game, I think you can dial his number up a few more times. But we're not the Titans, right? The Niners are not the Titans, or a team that's looking at maybe trying to get another number one pick in the draft in the top 5. They're a team that has playoff aspirations. And so when you get out there, you got to get it done, young man. And I think Watkins, from what we've seen, he has the ability, but he's got to go show it on Sunday.
Last one. Let's get your prediction on this thing. This is a unique game, I think, because if this Giants defense is 30th against the run, they're terrible against the run. They're 32nd in many of the top metrics against the run. So they're not stopping the run. But man, if you get into passing situations, you got Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence, Abdul Carter. I mean, maybe that's why they're not good against the run. They got all these pass rushers that are running right by these running backs. If the Niners can't run, the Giants are going to win this game. But I like the Niners to be able to run the ball, and I like the 49ers to win somewhat of a high-scoring game. I'm going to say 27-17. 27-17, Niners get a 10-point win at MetLife if they can run the ball. If they can't run the ball, I think it could be the opposite. It could be 27-17 Giants. How do you see this game?
I'm with you. And I think based on how the game started last week, Christian McCaffrey did not touch the ball in the first quarter. Only the third time in his career against Houston that he has not touched the ball in the first quarter. I think they're going to feed him early. And I think it goes back to the offensive line. We saw a little more power against Atlanta where you pull the backside guard, you have double team at the point of attack. Kittle pushes his man out of the way. I wouldn't be surprised to see a little more power run game and get Christian McCaffrey going. You want to avoid 3rd and long because you're right, that pass rush can get home. You named 4 really, really good pass rushers. Abdul Carter has been impressive as a rookie. Stay out of 3rd and long. Get some big plays too. Like once you get the run game going, maybe get a little play action, take a deep shot, whether it's Watkins or Robinson, whoever. Let's see a big play because the 49ers have not had that quick strike. I feel like most of their touchdown drives have been 12 plays or 13 plays. Let's get a couple chunk plays and have a four play touchdown drive. But I agree, it does start with the run game, and you can't go down early. If you go down early, then there's more pressure on throwing the ball, and that's where it could get out of hand.
Yep, you got to run the ball. You got to have some chunk plays, and you got to take care of the football. Those 3 things. It's like if teams don't turn it over, you can't turn it over. If they're creating chunk plays, you need to create some chunk plays. If they run the ball, you got to run the ball. I mean, this last game, the Houston Texans got chunk plays and they got long drives. I mean, that is a bad combination. Hopefully, the Niner defense fires in New Jersey. Todd, great stuff. Thanks for the time. Have a great week. We'll hopefully see you for the next home game at Levi's. Looking forward to it.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to it too.
Todd Husak, more straight ahead 49er forecast on the Sports Leader.
KNBR, the Sports Leader. faithful. Larry Kruger's rocking the red and gold as 49ers forecast continues on KNBR, the sports leader. Sports leader.
All right, we're coming down the home stretch on 49er forecast. Hope you enjoyed Todd Husak. I think he's the best. I think he's one of the best. When Stanford had Husak and Fleming, I mean, come on, man. It doesn't get a whole lot better than Dave Fleming and Todd Husak. And they blew that. I mean, it's amazing. Those guys have moved on, and unfortunately, Stanford doesn't have them anymore. But two of the best in the biz, Flem and Husak, and Husak is so good. Now he's part of the 49er KNBR pre- and post-game show for the home games. And so, they put me and Todd next to each other up in the press box. And, man, I love watching the game with Todd because I can just be like, he sees things. He sees coverages. He's a quarterback. You put a quarterback in the 8th level of Levi's with a bird's eye view of the field. I mean, there's just unbelievable amounts of stuff that he can glean and sees in the game that, that we wouldn't see, that I wouldn't see, that you wouldn't see, or I wouldn't see. Maybe you guys would all see it. But Todd's really great, and it's really a pleasure to have him on the radio for any of these segments, and he's really fun to chop it up with. Anyway, that's going to do it for us. Infinity Sports Radio is going to entertain you for the next hour. I believe at noon we've got the Georgia football game, so the Dogs will be on the radio this afternoon on the Sports Leader. Thanks to Raf for producing. Make sure you tune in bright and early, 7 a.m., I believe, tomorrow for 49er Pre. I will be joining John Dickinson and Adam Copeland for a segment right around a little bit more suitable hour, probably more like 8 o'clock I'll be by. And then we got the Niner game, 10 a.m. start. Niners and Giants from MetLife. Once again, Niners get it on their terms. They win 28-10, 28-17, something like that. Giants get the game on their terms, and Niners could lose by that same score. And to me, this is the game of the year. This is the defining game for the 49ers the rest of the way. They have a big, dominant win. They're back in the Super Bowl picture and race. They get their doors blown off, and it's time to start thinking about 26. That's my thoughts. Not theirs. That's mine. All right. Thanks to all of you. Have a great Saturday. We'll see you tomorrow on the Sports Leader.
KNBR, the sports leader.